harassing the police every single day.
Of course, you go over here and walk. Go.
No, don't turn your head. Do not turn your head. Your head is leading in the back. Do not turn. No, I know. Do not.
Was it you? Did you see it?
What's up, Marlon? Yeah. Why?
Because it's a violation of HIPAA law. He's actually in.
Pardon me?
You see anything around here right now? Did you see it?
Yeah.
Please leave.
Why?
Because right now we're working on this. Can you please leave the area? Because he's a victim. He's a victim right now. You want to leave?
I'm watching.
You want to leave the area?
I want to make sure he's being
Please
taken
back
care
away
of.
to the sidewalk all the way over there.
All right. What's the rule? Is there a rule about that?
I don't want you right here if I'm attending
Okay,
him.
but you're not
I want
doing
you on the other side of that
anything.
hedge.
What are you doing?
Right now, I want you on the other
You're
side.
not attending him. What are you doing?
Sir, right now, I'm going to ask you again on the other side of that hedge.
Why do I have to go to the other side?
You're going to get arrested for obstruction.
How am I obstruction?
I'm asking you to go to the other side and I don't want you approaching me.
I'm not approaching you. You approach me.
The hedge.
What about everybody else?
Other side of the hedge? Dude, you're walking away. It doesn't take effect.
An unexpected confrontation during an award ceremony honoring a sheriff's deputy in Florida. A city official, a commissioner, saying to that deputy when he came to the front of the room, "Do you remember falsely arresting me 4 years ago?" Here's ABC's Victor Akendo.
This South Florida award ceremony honoring Deputies of the Month quickly turned into a berating that's gone viral.
Joshua Gallardo,
It's my line.
you come down for a second?
Tamarac City Commissioner Mike Gelin called Deputy Joshua Gallardo over and leveled a public surprise over a prior confrontation.
It's good to see you again. You probably don't remember me, but you're the police officer who falsely arrested me 4 years ago.
In 2015, Gelin said he was recording on his cell phone as officers tried to break up a fight between homeless men. In his report, Gallardo said Gelin repeatedly ignored commands to move from the crime scene. Deputy Gallardo took him into custody for resisting arrest without violence. Gelin said the state attorney reviewed the cell phone video, then dropped the charges.
You're a bad police officer and you don't deserve to be here.
A stunned Deputy Gallardo appears to smile, then give a thumbs up before leaving.
The mayor said she was completely shocked. The Deputies Association called the commissioner's actions outrageous, but Gelin says he just doesn't want anyone else to go through what he went through or worse. David?
Victor Akendo reporting from.
Now move to our commissioner reports. Commissioner Gelin.
Good evening, everyone. Typically, during the commission report portion of this meeting, I typically show a PowerPoint presentation of the events and activities that I've been involved in the community over the last couple of weeks between today and the prior City Commission meeting. However, over the last couple of weeks, the only thing I have been doing is fielding phone calls, responding to emails, and other activities regarding a statement I made a couple of weeks ago. So there was an item on the agenda, I believe item 7A. So at that point, I will address that statement. But so in the meantime, all I'll do is I just want to thank everyone who's here on my behalf today and address the item later on this evening. Thank you.
Excuse us. We'll do public comment first, but you want to do your statement before public comment? It's your call, Commissioner. What would you like to do? You want to do? Ladies and gentlemen, before we get to public comments, Commissioner Gelin would like to make a statement.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to acknowledge some guests I have in the audience. Pastor of Piney Grove Baptist Church, Derek Hughes. Pastor of Bethel AME Church, Eddie Moise. And then my pastor, Pastor Henry Green of Mount Hermon AME Church. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. I also want to thank civil rights activist Sean King, Emmy Award-winning producer Ava DuVernay, and New York attorney and public defender Rebecca Kavanaugh, who supported me through their social media channels. Also want to thank my wife, my family, my friends, and those of you in the audience who are here today. So as you know, I made a statement a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago at the last commission meeting that surprisingly was heard and seen throughout the world. And I understand that my statements at the last commission meeting did cause some controversy. It is clear from the calls, emails, text messages that it struck a chord locally and nationally. It touched on a topic that runs in the undercurrent, something that people refuse to talk about. Because I spoke out and shared what had happened to me, I received messages of hate, threats, my family's safety has been compromised, and that's the last thing that I wanted to do, was put the safety of my wife and my child in jeopardy, but that is what happened. In the midst of all the media attention and the frenzy, my 5-year-old son turned to me and asked if I in fact had been arrested. I felt horrible and almost did not want to answer the question because I was embarrassed. With all the facts of what happened to me running through my mind, all I could muster as I looked at his little face was yes, but I was not supposed to be. This hurt my heart and brought me back to the day when I was wrongfully arrested. On that day in July of 2015, I felt violated by the criminal justice system that is supposed to protect me. I felt like I was singled out for videotaping, something I was legally entitled to do. It was a traumatizing experience that I've played out in my head many times. The handcuffs, the police car, the paddy wagon, the jail cell, and getting bonded out. It is something that will never leave me. In the aftermath of my comments, I realized that I am not alone. I received countless emails, text messages, voicemail messages, phone calls from others about how they were also wrongfully arrested and or mistreated. When I walk into events, go to church, or even the grocery store, people in the community have approached me to share their stories of how they have suffered in silence. They have shared their long-term emotional and professional effects of their wrongful arrest. Some have even suffered financially because they were terminated from their employment or incurred a financial burden as they attempted to clear their names. Like the parent in District 3 of an autistic elementary school student who was handcuffed because she had a tantrum. The young couple from District 4 who gets pulled over routinely with guns drawn but never received a ticket for anything. Or the young lady that was arrested in my district in front of her kids after she called for help. As I have done many times thinking about this incident, I wonder what would have happened if I did not have a video. I wondered what happens to other people who don't have video. From my discussions, it is clear what happens. They suffer the consequences of that injustice, and they suffer silently. I know it's hard for individuals who have never had this experience to understand the trauma, the emotional experience, the distress, the humiliation. I have to explain a mugshot for the rest of my life, as if I am a criminal, and I'm not a criminal. I'm a father, a husband, a son, a brother, a friend, a mentor, a city commissioner, and so many other things. I followed procedure, went to the state attorney, I filed a formal complaint, I spoke to internal affairs, I spoke to the county sheriff at the time, I looked into filing a lawsuit, but I'm not rich, and I spoke to the current county sheriff about it as well when we had the DeLuca roll issue in Tamarac. So I tried to address the situation through the proper channels. After all, nothing was done to rectify the situation. I tried to move on, but no one wants to hear these stories. It is easier to focus on decorum and protocol. It is easier to call this a distraction. It is easier to try to shun and silence me. But the truth of the matter is that even if I were to resign and go away, this issue would still bubble under the surface. The issue affects people all over the nation, of all political affiliations, racial backgrounds. I heard from people who specifically identify themselves as Democrat, Republican, white, black, Latino. And I have a stack of emails of letters of support that I will submit for the official record. I also have another stack of hate mail, but that's fine. But more importantly, I heard from residents. It affects residents right here in Tamarac. I've even heard from city employees on this issue. So the truth is, police misconduct affects our neighbors, our coworkers, our friends, and our family. For those who suggest that this is a distraction and we need to get back to the business of the city, please know that this is, in fact, the business of the city. Because people living right here in Tamarac, all over Tamarac, have been affected. When I ran for office, my pledge to public service was to represent the interests of my constituents. Not some, but all of my constituents. I always try my best to speak up for what's right, even when it's tough. When it comes to our police and how they treat residents and visitors of our city, I'd like to see some changes because every resident in Tamarac should feel safe and protected. Like I said in my statement, my comments addressed a negative experience, but I've had very positive experiences with law enforcement as well. I have good relationships with several police officers in multiple cities around the county. But anytime one police officer is challenged or something negative is said about one police officer, there are certain groups that want to take it as a smear of the entire law enforcement apparatus. That is not my goal. This is not an indictment of law enforcement in general. I made sure to mention in my official statement that 2 officers at the scene before the deputy arrived said nothing to me and had no problems with me. They had no issues. At the last commission meeting, I congratulated all of the other officers present during the ceremony. I know from hearing personal stories that we have hardworking, dedicated, brave police officers that uphold their oath of office daily. I have no problem celebrating and recognizing that, and I have done so right here from the dais. Just a few months ago, there was a family that had an issue with another family member in my community, and they were kicked out, and a bunch of BSO officers pooled their money together and helped that family go out of town to be with another family. And the BSO officers did not want to be recognized for that help. But I felt it was important to recognize those officers publicly because I know and understand police officers have a bad reputation and they need to do a better job of promoting the good deeds that they do that go unnoticed. So please give an applause to the BSO officers that helped in that situation. But it does no good to us currently or in the future, or for future generations, which does include my son, to act as if the system is perfect. I would hope and pray that justice is not some hollow word that we throw around, but something that we all, civilians and law enforcement, strive for. We can improve police and community relations while increasing police accountability, as there are programs and best practices that have worked to bring law enforcement and community together with common goals. It is not a secret that there is an issue, pointed out by a young student a few minutes ago. Numerous town halls and discussions have been held around the county, and one is being held in another city this very month. As an elected official, my job and goal are to make sure things are better for my constituents who are my neighbors. My job is to bring about positive change through action. At some point, you have to stand up and speak up for those who cannot or will not speak for themselves. And I don't want any of my residents suffering in silence. Therefore, I will be bringing together a group of people to figure out how we can address the concerns that have been shared with me over the last 2 weeks. I've had police officers from various cities offer to be a part of the solution. Individuals who have had negative experiences and wish to see the system improve and want to participate. Policy experts have offered their support and help. Church leaders and other community leaders have pledged to get involved. My plan is not only to have discussions, but put together an agenda that all of these groups can get behind so that we can achieve true, lasting change for the better. Although for some this may be an uncomfortable or awkward moment, I believe that working through these difficult moments will make us stronger and better. The City of Tamarac has been presented with a tremendous opportunity to show the nation and the world how to get it right. We must do it, and I believe that we can do it, and I hope that we can all do it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Gelin. At this time, we will now move back to public comments. First person I have on this list is Neil Glassman. Name and general location, please.
Neil Glassman, Tamarac, Florida. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, great to be in front of you again. I'm here this evening to discuss the crisis in relations between this City Commission and law enforcement. This goes beyond the latest incident involving Commissioner Gelin. Mayor and Commissioners, I must inform you, as the recently retired police chief for this city, the current situation is not sustainable. There is a difference between legitimate criticism of a deputy and using a platform of the City Commission to embarrass, humiliate, and berate that deputy. The four of you sitting on the dais tonight are leaders of this city. You have a responsibility to yourselves and the citizens you serve to act professionally and to not allow your personal feelings or emotions color your official actions when representing the city. Commissioner Gelin, I am not going to rehash your arrest from 4 years ago, other than to say it's imperative that any citizen obey the lawful orders of a law enforcement officer. My concern right now is the complete lack of faith the deputies and supervisors in Tamarac, and frankly throughout the agency, have in this body. This started back in April of this year after the so-called McDonald's incident. After a video clip of the incident went viral, there was a feeding frenzy of misinformation, false accusations, and irresponsible statements from leaders in the community. In an era where everyone gives voice to the notion of due process and not prejudging, is it too much to ask that we have a thorough investigation to an incident before our law enforcement officers are branded as guilty? Guilty based on a 50-second video from someone's cell phone? Mayor and Commissioners, in a rush to judgment, this body, soon after that incident, passed an ill-advised resolution demanding that a third deputy involved in the incident be removed from the City of Tamarac. This resolution passed 4-1, with only Mayor Gomez voting against it. To appease the anti-police fervor, this commission voted overwhelmingly to do something that was based on a lie. There was no third deputy who stood on someone's back, as was alleged, and that was used as the basis for this resolution. It didn't matter. There was no stopping what became a mob mentality. After the vote and over the following days, I spoke with each of you individually and expressed to you my dismay over the false narrative that was now on record as an official act of this commission. I explained that I would be meeting with Mr. Cernich, the city manager, and he would be dealing with the issue. The commission resolution was a watershed moment. In the aftermath, a number of deputies and sergeants assigned to the city asked to be transferred out, believing that the elected officials in Tamarac no longer supported them. Some of these transfers came to fruition, and these defenders of the community moved on to other areas of the agency. After the latest incident with Commissioner Gelin, more have asked for transfers, and now very few deputies want to come here compared to previous years when Tamarac was considered a favorable district to be assigned to. Deputy Gallardo, branded as a rogue officer by Commissioner Gelin, has since transferred out of Tamarac. The ones who suffer the most from this are the citizens and businesses in Tamarac. Losing well-trained, dedicated law enforcement professionals will affect this city. Having a demoralized, angry police force is good for only one constituency, the criminals. It is a sad state of affairs when the city manager has to walk across the parking lot and address deputies in roll calls to assure the personnel of Tamarac that the city does not hate them.
Captain, With due respect, I need to ask you to wrap it up, please.
I ask that this city commission in the future be more cognizant of the fact that these deputies and officers everywhere are acting under extreme conditions. Commissioner Gelin has mentioned that many times in his statements.
Thank you.
All we're asking is that they get the same vote, the same prejudgment, the same presumption of innocence, rather than convicting them in the media and on the city dais. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, snaps, please. No clap. Thank you. Rich Rossman. Name and location, please, for the record.
Rich Rossman, Broward County. Good evening. My name is Rich Rossman, and before I continue, I want to let the Commission, the persons in attendance, and anyone viewing online, the views I will be expressing, sharing, and describing are that of my own and not in any way that of my employer. This Commission should focus on bringing about positive change and support their law enforcement officers rather than publicly humiliate them and try them in the court of public opinion. Your actions and comments are not only disheartening and only further divide the community and are part of the toxic environment spreading throughout our country. Commissioner Gelin, using your words, you probably don't remember me, Commissioner, but I was one of the men that served this community for 5 years. And you, sir, are one making false statements, half-truths, setting a false narrative. You have misled your constituents. I believe you are a rogue public official, you are a bad commissioner, and don't deserve to sit on the dais. I'm a third-generation law enforcement officer. My grandfather, father, 2 uncles, 4 cousins have served the South Florida community collectively with over 200 years. The service my family has provided, along with the other men and women in this audience, come with sacrifices, missed birthdays, missed anniversaries, missed holidays. However, these sacrifices don't even begin to compare to the ultimate sacrifices others have made, one of which we just spoke about earlier. You just gave a check to the park about one of our own that died for this city. In the days following the Thursday, April 18th incident at the McDonald's, I watched in disbelief as the Commissioner Gelin used his political position to weaponize this commission and this community to try to convict these deputies in the court of public opinion. Commissioner Gelin had already made up his mind that these men were guilty and taking the easy way out. So did many of the commissioners who sided with them. It's unfortunate that as elected city officials, you don't understand one of the fundamental rights we're all given in this country, and that's due process. If any of you need a symbolic reminder of what the judicial process looks like and stands for, walk out these commission chambers, look on the northeast building of our office, and Lady Justice is painted there. I highly recommend, commissioners, when you leave here, look at Lady Justice and find out what it means to you. I would also like to point out a few of Commissioner Gelin's buzzwords that he's been sharing with the media, who in return feed on this misinformation. Falsely arrested is not an accurate statement, Commissioner Gelin. You were arrested based on probable cause, which is the legal standard to make a lawful arrest. The next phase of the judicial process is the formality of filing the case with the state attorney's office. Due process, once again, requires a higher standard, a threshold for them to proceed. You should be thankful, Commissioner Gelin, that they chose not to proceed. This does not mean that Deputy Gallardo's arrest was false. In closing, I'd like to point out the only 2 items that I wear every day are my wedding ring and a bracelet. My wedding ring was given to me 22 years ago and represents my wife and our family that we built together. The second is a thin blue line bracelet that was given to me 2 years ago by a 10-year-old little boy while I was working in off-duty detail. This little boy gave one of these bracelets to several other deputies that day and thanked all of us for our service. Well, we realize this is most part a thankless job, but what amazes me is that a 10-year-old boy recognizes the sacrifices that law enforcement officers make on a daily basis, and that the city commission fails to recognize what a 10-year-old child understands. With that being said, as everyone leaves here today, thank some of the men and women in uniform. I'll ask everyone in attendance to wear the bracelets you were given upon entering the meeting to show your support to the hardworking men and women of law enforcement within the city of Tamarac, Broward County, state of Florida, and all throughout our great nation who are willing to sacrifice their lives for you on a daily basis.
Sergeant, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, is Dean Simpson still not here? Okay. Patty Lynn? And I do understand the emotion. Let's please try to keep this to 3 minutes, because that's really all we're supposed to have.
Patty Lynn, 6411 Northwest 58th Street in Tamarac. And as you all know, I haven't been to a live commission meeting in a long time. However, I live in District 2, and I'm embarrassed and ashamed at the behavior that Commissioner Gelin, who I supported for election in 2008, exhibited. There's a time and a place for everything. Attempting to debase and humiliate a BSO sheriff's deputy who was present at a city commission meeting to receive an award is abhorrent to me. Your backstory is irrelevant at this time. I was especially interested in the proposal that you have with the clergy and city leaders and county leaders to help. That could have been done without this nastiness, you know. You didn't have to wait till everybody was, if you thought it was going on, you should have done it ahead of time. You were acting in your official capacity as an elected commissioner of the city of Tamarac. You chose to act in a manner that brought shame, shock, and disbelief to all who saw it. The fact that you had not planned to attend the meeting and left immediately after dramatically dropping the mic also speaks volumes. Commissioner Gelin, I didn't doubt that the wound of your arrest has been festering for these 4 long years, but the personal problem could have been dealt with in a much more constructive manner. I believe Deputy Gallardo, the mayor, your fellow commissioners, and your constituents deserve an apology. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's keep the clapping to your snaps. Thank you, Patty Lynn. Lisa Turner, Okay, thank you. We will come back to you, and hopefully I won't screw up your name at that time either. Thank you. Luke Berrien? Or Berrien? Name and address, please, for the record. Name and address, please, for the record, or the extent of the address you're comfortable in putting into.
My name is Luke Barron. I live in 8101 Northwest 68th Terrace here in Sunflower. I moved into Tamarac in 1973. My parents moved into Sunflower, bought a house there.
Sir, can you please speak into the microphone?
Moved into Sunflower. My parents bought a house there. I bought that house in 1996 and raised my family there. So let's talk about BSO. Beyond Tamarac, BSO has a pattern of making minorities less safe. We do not feel safe around police. I personally know many people that could not enter this space because they feel traumatized. What Commissioner Gelin felt is a trauma, but it's nothing compared to people who have been abused by power and minorities who have been abused by power. And that is a statistical fact for BSO here. We almost lead the nation in abuse of minorities. And so, as the Tamarac City Commission, we need to address that. It's not personal. It's not because we hate police. It's because they're abusing their power, and they're doing it regularly. And they have their ways. They know how to game the system. They know how to make it look. They stand there, they beat you, and they tell you stop resisting. And they have a million ways to do that. They have a million ways to game the system. And poor people and minorities are the focus of those abuses because white people, it doesn't work because the system supports them. So they go after the people who are most vulnerable because it's easy to do. And so as a city commission, as our leaders, you need to look at the numbers and be objective about how we address this problem. My daughter spoke before. Her solution is to have our own police force. I remember when we had our own police force. I had an officer named Clem. He used to bring my dad home drunk every weekend, and my mother loved him, and we loved the Tamarac police because my dad supported us. He was not beaten and tased and criminalized. He was allowed to support our family. And he wasn't a nice guy to police, I gotta tell you. He cussed them. He was mean. He was nasty. And Clem still brought him home every weekend. He was a police officer that worried about the community. He was a police officer that cared. These people, they've got their power, they see a minority, they're down, and they make sure and criminalize them so that they're no longer a member of the community. And that is what you need to look at. Commissioner Gelin...
Let's wrap it up, please.
Commissioner Gelin was using the only political voice left to minorities, which is to cause a ruckus.
Thank you.
If you keep silencing them, they will cause a ruckus. That's how it works. That's how this works. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, come on. Thank you. Thaddeus Gamery. If you would, over here, please.
Thaddeus Gamery, City of Sunrise. And I want to say that I see this as a teachable moment. I'm a retired New York City Police Lieutenant. I'm a member of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. I was recently in Baton Rouge teaching police officers mindfulness skills with the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. Center for Mind-Body Medicine also responded to the shooting at Stoneman Douglas to help people heal from that trauma. I have an understanding and an awareness of trauma that I wish I had when I was working in the New York City Police Department. My experience in law enforcement left me traumatized, and there was post-traumatic stress, and that was before 9/11. And I'm just going to read something that I presented when I was in Baton Rouge. Oh, of course, I can't find it now. But basically what it says is that in each moment, there's an opportunity for growth, and they call it post-traumatic growth. And that growth can take place simultaneously with law enforcement and the community. And this is an opportunity for that growth, that there's something can come of this that's greater than what existed before. And we can do better in law enforcement. Law enforcement has to grow. It has to learn. And left to its own devices, it won't. It will not. And I was doing training in the New York City Police Department in the 90s, in which we had to train white officers not to shoot black officers. And I see there's a lot of NYPD caps in here, and I honor you for your service. And it's an honorable profession, but you have to admit growth and expansion is needed. We should be more connected to the community, and the community should be a resource. And the trauma that was expressed by Commissioner Gelin is real. That's a real trauma. And that's too often overlooked, that the power of arrest is an awesome power. And it should not be did lightly. And it should be done with compassion, truth, and equity. So my post-traumatic stress makes it very hard for me to stand here right now. But I felt compelled to be here, to have an opportunity to speak and to share, and say that this is a teachable moment. And I would like to be part of that experience and growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Julie Jones?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and all in attendance. I live in the city of Margate, and I'm pretty active in the city.
Ms. Jones, just state your name from yourself, from your perspective, please. Your name?
Julie Jones.
Thank you.
An unbelievable coincidence happened last night. My husband was doing a job on Milam Dairy Road and 25th Street. He was paving a road, finishing a job so the bigger guys could come in and finish it. My husband is an African American. He was stopped by a law enforcement officer who came on the property with a weapon and said to my husband, "State your name and put your hands on the basket he was using." And that's what he did. Knowing my husband's mouth, I'm surprised he's not deceased, but I'm glad he had the common sense to listen to the law enforcement officer, due to the fact we come from a law enforcement family. I do not approve of any commissioner, whether it be the city of Margate, Tamarac, and any other city, speaking the way Commissioner Gelin did. The man was deserving of an award, and to embarrass and humiliate him in the police department is out of order. There's a time and a place for it. It's called internal affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Ladies and gentlemen, our next person is Marcel Fellison. Your name and address for the record, or the portion of your address you are comfortable putting into the record, please.
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commission, my name is Marsha Ellison.
Sorry.
And I am president of the Broward National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And I've come today, this evening, to make sure that I share with you that I fully support Commissioner Gelin. It would appear that there is no time to call out police misconduct. If you are ever a victim of police misconduct, it stays with you forever. Just as positive experiences stay with you, negative ones do as well. And for too often, it means a whole lot more for us. It means that your life has changed. It means it is nothing that's good is going to come of that. I am so glad that he is here to be our commissioner, because oftentimes that's not the case. We are not anti-police. We are anti-police misconduct. We are anti-bad police who don't do the right thing. Now, I'm sure that this commission has met and spoken with your general counsel, as we have ours. We've reviewed the videos, just I'm sure as you have. And we support the position of Commissioner Gelin. We are glad that he spoke up. We are certainly in support of him. And we want you to know that we support you as well, but long as you're doing the right thing. This is a matter of public safety. And this commissioner has the responsibility to speak about public safety in your city. In the NAACP, we have often had to issue a travel advisory because it simply was not safe for folk who travel in certain cities across the nation, and we do that often simply because it is a matter of public safety. And as long as he and you all are up there, you have the same obligation to speak about public safety. And whenever you can't feel safe in your own city, then there certainly is an issue. We look forward to working with you, but certainly just know that we do not support censorship, and we stand with our Commissioner Gelin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Henry E. Green, Jr.
I think I can talk into this. Good evening. I'm Henry E. Green, Jr. I'm the pastor of Mount Hermon AME Church in Fort Lauderdale. I'm Commissioner Gelin's pastor. I want to say, first of all and foremost, that African American people are very forgiving people. We forgive wrongs that are done to us. Just recently in Dallas, Texas, you saw a police officer who killed a young black man, and his brother hugged the young police officer. And the judge came down and showed forgiveness. In South Carolina, when a white racist killed 9 people in a AME church in Charleston. The family members forgave that person and said they held no malice against him. We are very forgiving. But it does not mean that because we have forgiveness that we do not expect accountability. And in the case of Commissioner Gelin, the arrest that took place that could have easily been avoided, and in many cases it is avoided for the larger community. We have watched in our community where police officers have taken liberties with our children and handled them in ways that they do not handle their own children. We keep forgiving, but we do expect accountability. Now, what was being raised here about civility and maybe the right place, wrong time, also take in consideration how Mike Gelin felt on that day when his life was totally turned upside down on that day, and the pain and the humiliation that was caused to him and his family. You won't understand that pain unless you come from where we come from. I'm 62 years old, and on 3 different occasions in my life, as a teenager, as a young man, and as a man in his 50s, I was mishandled by the police. 3 different occasions. I've had thousands of encounters with police. Good 99% of them were wonderful encounters. But I did have 3 bad encounters with 3 different white police in my lifetime. I was affected by it. I pray for my children every day. And I have forgiven those officers who mistreated me. But I still expect accountability.
Thank you, Pastor. Rick Beasley.
Good evening to the Commission. My name is Rick Beasley. I live in Pembroke Pines. I'm a good friend of Mike Gelin, our Commissioner. 2 days after the incident that transpired here, there was an incident that occurred in Atlanta, Georgia. Mike asked if I would speak about it. An 82-year-old man who served this country 27 years in charge of the military police, retired, served this country, serves this community to ensure others have an opportunity and have a voice. On this particular day, 2 weeks ago, driving to his office, still working at 82 years of age, happened to turn down the street, then was told to turn around with a gun in his face by a Atlanta police officer. Now, that gentleman who I'm speaking of happens to be my father. He has worked for Operation Push, Rainbow Push Coalition. Unfortunately, the officer didn't know who he was referring to or speaking with. He had the opportunity to have the bully pulpit in front of him. With the mayor, as a matter of fact, met with him this afternoon, but came to his house the next day. Even the officer came to the house because of who he was. Unfortunately, we have a number of individuals in this community, in this country, that do not have the opportunity to share their story at all. Now, I'm blessed that nothing happened, that his finger didn't hit the trigger, and he's still here. But I can tell you the day after, the comment my father made was, let's see how we can make this a better moment. A better moment. Now, I shared with you, he served in the military, in charge of military police. So our family has always been law-abiding, very supportive of the police. I can understand maybe the officer here that day when Commissioner Gelin had the bully pulpit was embarrassed. And that's unfortunate. And as the pastor mentioned, that Mike was embarrassed. So let's take this opportunity to get rid of the embarrassment, that the feelings of hurt go away. But let's make sure that individuals, unfortunately, we have our commissioner who had to use the bully pulpit. But there's individuals in this community that do not have that opportunity. That if you all create an opportunity, maybe a civil review board that hears those complaints, that also gives the officers an opportunity to have their stories heard as well as the citizens, maybe our community and our country will get better and grow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beasley. Kimberly Gray Roberts.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, everyone in attendance. I come to read to you.
Ma'am, can you please speak into the microphone?
Sorry. Is that better? Kimberly Roberts, Tamarac. I come to read to you a letter of support from the Miami-Dade Chap branch of the NAACP to the City of Tamarac, Mayor Gomez, and Tamarac commissioners. The Miami-Dade branch of the NAACP stands unified in its support of Commissioner Mike Gelin for using his platform to address an extremely sensitive issue plaguing our nation and the South Florida community at large. With regard to the ongoing issues of Black and brown people being disproportionately and in some cases unjustly overrepresented in the criminal justice system. This issue is not a new phenomenon and continues to be problematic in 2019. During your recent commission meeting, Commissioner Gelin spoke to the issue of being falsely arrested by an overzealous police officer, and because Mr. Gelin filmed the encounter where Broward County sheriffs responded to an assault call. By filming the incident, Commissioner Gelin's actions were those of a concerned citizen and was well within his legal rights. After reviewing the video on the internet and via local news media outlets, Commissioner Gelin appeared compliant to the officer's request, and although he was subsequently arrested. The circumstances of this arrest later prompted the state attorney to drop the charges. Unfortunately for Mr. Gelin and many other men and women of color, an arrest was made. The individual is fingerprinted, photographed for a mugshot, and a criminal record file becomes part of the person's legal history, a circumstance that can affect most people's life in a negative way going forward. Fortunately for Mr. Gelin, he had the resources and wherewithal that this incident did not adversely affect his career path. But that is not the case for many people of color that have been falsely accused. With this in mind, we do hope that the City of Tamarac will instead use this teachable moment to further this discussion and work towards changing policies and address incidents where citizens of Tamarac are arrested without cause. Furthermore, we request no further action be taken against Commissioner Gelin for speaking out to address a national issue that has affected one of Tamarac's own city officials and citizens. We thank you for your consideration of our letter of support and are hopeful that you will follow our recommendation. Yours in unity, Reuben Roberts, President, Miami-Dade branch of the NAACP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roberts. Mark Florio? Item 9? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who has not signed up who wishes to speak, sir? Please come up. Name and address, please, for the record.
Dexter Bridgman, Hollywood, Florida. I listened quietly in my seat as I heard some of the police officials that preceded me condemn Commissioner Gelin. One stated that it was the wrong time, the wrong place. And a few others said it was the wrong time and the wrong place. Well, I say to you all, there is no wrong time or wrong place for the truth and justice. It took a lot of courage for Commissioner Gelin to do what he did and say what he said. And I can tell you, as a person that's been arrested, but not convicted, but has a mugshot, I'm the president of an organization called BOMA, which stands for the Black-Owned Media Alliance, which consists of 15 different black-owned media entities. On a monthly basis, we reach 2.2 million people, readers, listeners, and viewers in South Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. And I can tell you unequivocally, I stand here today in total representation of the organization, total representation, giving 100% support to Commissioner Gelin. As I said, I too was the victim of a false arrest. I spent 2 days in jail. Monday morning, with my orange jumpsuit on, I approached the judge, Dexter Bridgman. The judge said, "Mr. Bridgman, you're free to go." Well, I was happy about that, but I was like, are you serious? I spent 2 days in jail for what? Then the state attorney comes over to me and says, "Mr. Bridgman, we're so apologetic. This should have never gone to, you should have never been here. We apologize. The officers were over officious. They didn't do a good job in the investigation. We apologize." But you know what? That still is with me. I just started dating a woman 8 months ago. What's the first thing she did? She Googled me to see if I had an arrest record or anything else. Guess what? Ring, ring, ring. What's this mugshot all about? I was invited to a presidential meeting with Barack Obama. Secret Service disinvited me. I said, "What happened?" He said, "You need to check your mugshot. You need to check your Google." We didn't have to go very far to look. That's going to stay with me. It's been with me for now 3 years. I'm still trying to get it expunged. But it seems to me that police officers just think it's like handing out candy, arresting black men in this country. And this has to stop. And hopefully with Mike's, I told Commissioner Gelin that he's actually the poster boy, whether he likes it or not. So hopefully we can get beyond this and move about proper justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bridgman. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it's Pastor.
Good evening. Thank you for the time. I too saw the video, and my name is Derek Hughes of Lauderhill.
Thank you.
I am the pastor of First Baptist Church of Lauderdale Lakes. Again, I too was surprised when I saw the video. And the question tonight really is not about some of the extraneous, superfluous things that probably have been raised tonight, but it's really about the heart of civility. Civility is about how we are civil and how we treat one another, how we care for one another as civilians and likable people to one another, respect one another, care for one another. The issue is, did Commissioner Gelin act uncivilized at the moment of this meeting when he brought up the issue with the officer? The reality of it is, it would have been uncivilized to have exhausted all of your possible alternatives and remain silent. I, as a black person, would not even be allowed in this meeting to speak if somebody had not acted civilized to challenge the moment of uncivility. I think tonight we all are faced with some things that are not always pretty and nice and neat, and we like to have things nice and neat, and we don't want to talk about the things that are not nice and neat. But the reality of it is, without struggle, there is no progress. Without dealing with the ugliness that really face the reality of the country and the time we live, we won't go forward. Was it uncivilized to speak about the truth of what happened? Let's move forward.
as a people together, regardless of race, ethnicity, regardless of color of skin. Let's move forward to say, how do we talk about these things? How do we deal with these things that are the reality of our time in a civilized manner without being always so pretty and so neat? It causes us to pull out the ugliness until we reshape it and come up with a better and a beautiful, more adaptable country. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Ladies and gentlemen, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this matter?
My name is Clayton McGee, Lauderdale Lakes.
Thank you.
I'm here in support of Mike Gelin. As I said,
Please speak into the microphone. And can I have your last name again? I didn't hear it.
Clayton McGee. Is that better? I'm here in support of Mike Gelin. His bravery has made me brave to come up here and say what I have to say about my story, because I have also faced abuse from the police officers. And just to hear him speak out, you know, use his platform that many are not brave enough to do, because a lot of things go on in our community that is not brought to light. And I appreciate you, Mike, and our community appreciates you for your bravery, for standing up for what's right, and standing up to the injustice that was performed against you 4 years ago. Because many of us cannot speak. Many of us don't have that platform. Many of us cannot tell our story. And by you being brave and stating your piece on your platform and reaching out to us, you have also emboldened us to also speak out and tell our stories. Because change is needed. Pointing fingers, saying who's wrong and right, is not going to get us anywhere. We have to come together as a community, both African American, whites, police officers, and civilians. We have to come together and make this thing work. Otherwise, we're going to continue to go down this spiral of people, unarmed people getting shot in the streets, protests, riots, hate for the police in our community. It just needs to stop. I'm 37 years old. Half of my life has been spent in prison. Just let that sink in. Just let that sink in. And Mike's story is just a minor reflection of the things that happen to many of us, black young men and women in our community every day. His challenge is just a grain of sand on the beach of many of us who have been falsely arrested, who have been beat in the streets, who have had charges, drugs, guns, lies put on us. Not every officer is like that, as we've always expressed. It's only the few. But the few that are out there doing the dirt, the majority need to speak out against them. There is no code of conduct when it comes to the rightfulness of the law. There is no brotherhood when it comes to the rightfulness of the law. The law is the law. And somebody made a comment about Lady Justice earlier. Well, I wish she would take off her blindfold so she can see us and give us some justice. Because that blindfold has been on for too long. We need to take that off our eyes and face reality that there is a problem within our community. There is a problem about relations between civilians and the police force, especially African Americans. We need to stop running from the truth, stop condemning people for speaking their rights, stop censoring people for speaking up for their stories and their injustices that happen to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGee. Pastor? And then I take it, the gentleman, you'll be next. You want to sit up here and wait? No?
Good evening. I'm Eddie Moyes. Not only am I the pastor of Bethel AME Church in Pompano, but I'm also a resident here in Tamarac. And I stand here today in support of Commissioner Gelin. I stand here today because I think it's important that we recognize John Wesley said, what one generation tolerates, the next generation will embrace. And that's critical that we understand that if we embrace an injustice today, if we tolerate today, years from now, this young lady who stood up at the age of 16 is going to be facing something more severe and more critical. At that stage The next generation is going to be tolerating it. This is just the way it is. This should not be the norm. In 2019, we should not be having to have this conversation, but we are. It is my prayer that we can work together towards a solution. Because I believe a great man said, and an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. And nobody should want to have to deal with an injustice. It's unfortunate that the commissioner had to go through this, but as we look forward to the next generation, it's my prayer that everyone here tonight will not embrace this, so therefore it would not be an issue of ever having to tolerate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Sir? Excuse me. Name and address, please, for the record, or location.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Michael Drummer, City of Tamarac. I'm here standing in support of Commissioner Gelin. Thank you. Thank you for speaking out. For just about any African American that stood here tonight can tell you horror stories of their false arrests. Again, I want to thank you for standing up and being our voice. I appreciate it. Madam Mayor, I think you were out of line to speak out against Mr. Gelin for, I think he have the right to freedom of speech, right? Excuse me, a little bit nervous, but
Be nervous. I don't bite, I promise.
he has the right. This was his experience. This is most black men's experience, not only in South Florida, but around the country. From our white brothers and sisters who disagree with him because you think this wasn't the time, I'll leave you with this. 236 in the last 20 years, 236 African Americans have been shot and killed by Broward Sheriff's Office. Not one indictment, not one grand jury, all cleared. I thank God that you weren't shot and killed. Thank you for being our voice, and we stand behind you.
Thank you, Mr. Excuse me, sir, was it Bremer or Drummer? I had trouble hearing. Drummer. Excellent. Thank you very much, sir. Hi.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. My Commissioner, Mike Gelin. My name is Anthea Pennant. I'm a resident in Tamarac. I didn't come here necessarily prepared to speak, but I would be remiss if I didn't say something about the extraordinary courage that you've shown, Mike. You know, I've raised 2 children, and even though I have a background in law enforcement myself, and I've actually taught law enforcement professionals, as I was raising my children, and in particular my son, I would often guide him through a police stop. I would often guide him about how he needs to speak to law enforcement, because I live in fear every single day that my son could be harmed. Thank God he's escaped being arrested. But even today, as at 26 years old, being a legislative manager in a county, I worry for him every time he drives from that county to home, because I never know which rogue officer might hold him hostage. The reality is, we all know they're good law enforcement officers, but they're absolutely bad ones. I've worked with some, and so it is unrealistic and it is unfair and unjust to think that because someone speaks up about it, that they should be silenced. So, Madam Mayor and Commissioners, I hope that you will abort your idea for censorship, because when you censor Mike, the rest of us will get seriously vocal. Thank you, Mike, for your courage.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Sir?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gelin, Broward County. Clearly, I have a bias because the commissioner
is my brother. In 1997, I was part of an organization called FASA, Florida African American Student Association. There was an African American woman giving a class, and it was called Going Home. Before the class started, I asked her, why is the class called Going Home? She said, well, one night I didn't make it home. Come to find out, this was a class on how to teach African Americans how to behave when they get pulled over. So the first thing we're taught is that once we get pulled over, we pull our hands out with our license, registration, and insurance, let the officer know, listen, I just want to know I want to go home, and I know you're trying to go home too. That's the icebreaker to make sure you don't get killed. This is the class that I had to take, and it was in a room bigger than this room. I say that to say this. There's an issue that goes on within the police force that everyone just wants to ignore. It just happened to happen to my brother, who's a commissioner, who happens to have a seat of power now. My brother will tell you, I'm not into politics. I don't believe in politics, at least until I saw him do what he did. Because he literally has a voice. And it's getting world recognition, national world recognition, because this is an issue that all city governments and mainly the United States wants to put a big sheet over it. If you keep skipping dirt underneath the rug, eventually it'll pile up. And we see this big rug up to the ceiling, and we just turn a blind eye to it like nothing's happening. And just imagine it. You officers who are in uniform. I challenge you to just be in a black person's shoes one day, or a Latin person, or a woman in any case, just a woman who's being abused by a police force. You're the one that gets arrested. You get handcuffed. You're locked up in jail, 9 hours in a cold cell, embarrassed. And then you see this person getting awarded right in front of you, and you do nothing? Studies show that when injustice occurs to us and we do nothing, our will gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And everyone wants to address decorum. No one wants to address the truth. Because in this society, truth has taken a back seat to emotions and feelings. The truth has no relevance whatsoever. You in uniform have no desire for the truth whatsoever. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Because there's a truth here that you want to ignore. And what kind of officer are you if you want to ignore the law? It's emotional. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Michelle Jones, and I live at 5830 Northwest 64th Avenue in Tamarac. It is all very good to have everyone come up here from different organizations, but no one has addressed the problems that is continuously affecting us as a culture, which is mental health. That was expressed here 2 weeks ago was anger. We don't deal with those angers. We don't have programs that are dealing with counseling, neither with the officers or with our African American youth, boys, or young men or men that are sitting on commissioner boards now. What we need to do as society, as a community, is start dealing with the fact that this is anger, and it's anger that comes out in many different ways. So we need to start applying the mental health in our community and in our culture.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Good evening, Lawrence Klarman, Tamarac resident. You all, I believe, took some kind of oath to uphold your ethics here. I'm not sure, but objectively speaking, because there's a lot of emotion in all this, objectively speaking, this was the wrong time for you to make those remarks, sir. I hear what everybody's saying. I heard what you said, very passionate. When I first learned about this, I was very angry. I was like, man, how can you do it? You know, this deputy took an illegal alien who was wanted for murder off the street, and that was his moment to be applauded. I understand now from listening to everybody that you're talking about a trauma and everything, and I get it now. I understand what that must be like. But at the same time, you're talking about, hey, let's have this, fact-finding commission and everything. It took 4 years for you to come up with this all of a sudden. You know, I just like all of a sudden it's now you're bringing this up. Why wait 4 years if this has affected you so much? I mean, I don't know what you've done up to this point, but it's like you're taking this moment to go, hey, let's do something. It could have been done a long time ago. And like I'm saying, I understand your trauma. I was angry to hear what you said, but I just think it's the wrong moment because this deputy helped save this community, possible, you know, from taking the murderer off the street. And that's all I really want to say. And by the way, also, if you want to come over to the solution, I'm willing to help. All right. And by the way, I am a deputy sheriff. I worked in Tamarac. I worked somewhere else. I'm coming up on 30 years. I've worked with kids. I've been a school cop. I am willing to help you, sir. But I just want to say, at that moment, it wasn't the right moment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Alan Berkowitz. I'm a retired police detective from New York City. Tonight I came in with my friends, and truthfully, I was here to hear the argument on the commissioner. But listening to the community, to the law enforcement officers, you guys on this commission, you have a bigger problem. Your problem is you have a major disconnect with your community, and you have a major disconnect with your law enforcement. In order to spell community, you need unity. And you guys don't have unity. You don't have it amongst yourself, and you don't have it with the people in this community here. And to the lieutenant, I understand the lieutenant from the NYPD that taught, sir, I came on the job in 71 as a police trainee. No one ever taught us. And I spoke to my other police officers, friends here. No one ever taught us how not to shoot minorities. We never were taught that. Just to let you know that, you came on, I was already retired by the time you must probably came on the job. We're police officers. We took an oath. No matter where, we took an oath to protect and to serve. It did not matter what color you were, what your religion was, what your height or anything. That was our job. And I'm sorry that you feel that you had to teach officers how not to shoot minorities. I'm sorry that you had to be subjected to that. All of us here, none of us were taught that. And getting back to the commission, I have another couple of seconds. You guys really have to sit and talk to your community and your law enforcement. You do have a disconnect here. Forget about what's going to happen when I go home. Berkowitz means nothing to you guys. Once the law enforcement gives up on you, you have a problem. Don't ever give up on your law enforcement. And what this young lady said about having a Tamarac Police Department, she's 1,000% correct. Because once you lose your police department and once you lose your fire department, you lost your identity. All they are is another vendor to you. But when you have your own, they're responsible to you. Just understand that. They're contract employees. When you become a BSO, they're contract. When you become a Tamarac police officer, they're yours. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dean Simpson, Broward County. This was amazing tonight. Wow. First time I've been to Tamarac and had the opportunity to sit on something like this. And if this is a starting point, I think you guys can do a lot from here. Starting with the first couple of speakers and leading to the pastors, and I'm sitting here and I'm going, how can I agree with everybody? How can I take a piece of this and a piece of that? And because people have passion. They believe from their point of view. And I'm a retired New York City police officer that was shot in the line of duty. And I know the fear an officer goes through. So that's what we work in. But then I hear people tonight saying the fear that they walk in, which I can't relate to. So how do we bring this together? You are the leaders of the community. You will decide how to move forward. You will decide on how best to bring people together and heal. And for me, and for those people that spoke with such passion tonight, I hope you can find forgiveness and pray for that officer that was unprofessional at some time in your life. Just as I have prayed for the person that assaulted me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen.
I'm Samson Borgelin, Vice Mayor for the City of North Lauderdale, and also I represent the Neon Nation National Haitian National American elected officials. I'm here. Sorry, because I was not supposed to be here because I'm sick. But after I feel a duty to be here tonight, even though I said I was not going to be here. But I'm here to say that what I hear tonight and what I've heard the whole past 2 weeks, I've been really divided. But after I heard a lot of things there and spoke with Commissioner Gelin today, he agrees that, first of all, he did not violate a principle. He said he was tacky. It means that apparently he understands, and he said that tonight, that he's been listening to the news and everything that happened there. And I personally believe that represent a city where I honor what BS was doing. As a commissioner and a vice mayor also, I realize that we represent a lot of the people in the United States where cities have a lot of issues also. This is an opportunity, as many people have said already, that we look at not just the negative, but we look at the positive that will come out of that. It's an opportunity for cities, for the nation to wake up, to find out what's the problem, how to work together, to bring communities together. And I think tonight here, these members, mayor and all the commissioners here, you have an opportunity to talk together, find out how we can bring the community together based on that, because nothing happens for nothing. There's something positive that will come out of this. I truly believe that. And as so many speakers have said, it's time to heal the community. There's too many things been said already. I hear people saying it's a criminal, they call them criminal commissioners. I don't think that should be done. And then I've never been arrested, but I understand also that we are all deserve respect. Once we're elected, we represent so many people here. Neon is with you, Commissioner. I am also with BSO, but we need also to have a good job. So that's all I want to say. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. This young lady wanted to speak, and then I know we have two other gentlemen who wanted to speak. Go ahead, please.
Hello, good evening. My name is Aletha Redwood, and I live in Tamarac, 7657 Tamarac Island Circle. And the reason why I'm here today, this case really caught my attention on a personal level. A few months ago, I had a meeting, a community meeting, and I believe I spoke with Neil Glassman, and the form setting was a question, would I feel comfortable calling the police officer if I needed help? And I said no. And I said no. He says, why wouldn't you feel comfortable? And he said, because, I have a son, he's 24 3 at the time. He's black. I see on TV. I wouldn't want to call the police for a minor situation, domestic situation, and my son is arrested, and then he's arrested. He can't get into certain colleges, certain job. If I don't have the money to get his records expunged, it affects his life for the rest of his life. And that's the real reason why I'm here today. I think Commissioner Gelin need to speak out at that moment, lead me to believe that there was something missing in the lack of justice that he felt. Because if I raise my son, teach him to do everything right, respect the officer, go to school, pay your bills, be honest, and he's arrested and getting a mugshot and embarrassed and humiliated in front of the community without getting a decent apology publicly, how do you think that affect a person? You know, and I think we're missing that. We're missing that. Everyone is saying there's a time and a place for a thing or to call somebody out on a certain agenda, but when this commissioner was being arrested, being humiliated and embarrassed in front of his community, his constituents, was that done in a private moment? Did he get a public apology? Did he feel vindicated that he was arrested unjustly and feel that he could move on? And I think that's what we're missing here. That's not happening. Another thing, I heard a gentleman here suggest illegal immigrant. And I tell you what, that doesn't sit well with me. It's undocumented. We are all human beings, and we have to be treated equally and fairly no matter what, no matter where you come from, no matter how much money you make, no matter who your dad is, no matter what you do for a living. We have the right as human beings to be treated equally and fairly with due process. And I feel that the commissioner does not feel that he had due process because he was embarrassed in front of his community. And he did not get the proper acknowledgement and the satisfaction to move forward. And I believe the community is to protect and serve.
Ms. Redwood, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Would you like? Name and address, please.
Yeah, it's Bob Fortier, 79th Street, Tamarac. I wasn't going to say anything tonight. I sat home for the last 2 weeks and I wrote down an awful lot of things, both good and bad, and ended up shredding everything. Because I thought what really happened here, in my opinion, it could be different from everyone else's, was a disgrace. But I respect everybody's opinion here. So I want to take it to a different thought. I want to talk about 3 people who influenced my life. Lucy, Mrs. Collins, and Martin. Lucy was my mother. She raised 9 children by herself. She gave us one thought, constantly beat us into it. She says, when you're right, you stand up for your rights. But when you're wrong, you admit you're wrong and you correct yourself. Mrs. Collins was my high school history teacher back in the 60s. On her very first day of class, she says, if I don't teach you anything about U.S. history, learn this one lesson. A thing is right or a thing is wrong. There's no in between. Another reinforcement of that thought in my life. The third person was Martin, and we all know him. I never met him, but he says, you will not be judged by the color of your skin, but by the content of your character. Okay? I have had life threatened. I had a gun put in my face. I had things thrown at me. I had obscenity screamed at me, not because I'm black, but because I'm gay. So you've got nothing over me. You all know what I do for the city. You all know my volunteer work here. I'm asking you to make the right judgment between good and bad, between what is right and correcting yourself. It's that simple. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Ronald Wasserman, I live in Tamarac. Thank you for listening to me this evening. Many of you know me here. I've spoken many times before the City Commission. Sometimes I've raised my voice. Sometimes I've gotten very emotional with you. But we've managed to see one another and come together on certain issues. I'm not here to speak whether, Mike, it was the right time, right place. That's up to you, my friend. But as a victim of crime, I know what Mike's talking about. We've been victims of crime not once, twice. So we know the system. When we were assaulted right across the street from the library, the police officer came to look for videotape. Saw maybe potential videotape. There was just a faux camera there. So then, the case was given to a detective, and I went down and they said, "Can you help me give a description of this person?" I worked with him for 5 hours. It's good to see NYPD here. I am close to many people on BSO, and I realize that we need organized systems like BSO. Police, are we going to call a crackhead for a crime? No. So folks, I don't want to be the last one to speak, because usually I'm the only one who speaks. It's good to see a lot of you here. If you're interested in issues, especially people who live in Tamarac, come on out. You feel like you're knocking your head against the wall sometimes? You are. But we have to keep after many of these people. You know it, and I know it. So I'm just going to leave it as this. Many of you here I've gotten to meet, and I've met with almost everyone that sits on this podium, the dais. I've met with other people in the city. I've met with Captain Glassman, now retired. I know our police chief now. I know Chief Percy. So again, folks, I'm just looking to many of you saying, if you could get excited about some other things that ail our city besides decorum, I think we'd be a lot better off. Many of us are turned off to these loud voices that we hear consistently. But I am a Libra, and I am Lady Justice. I will take the blinders off, and I will look for injustices everywhere they come. Because I'm an entitled white guy, right? So thank you folks for listening to me. I'd like to see many of you. I support any of you. We need change in Tamarac. Please help us.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you very much.
Kim Campbell, Tamarac. Commissioner Gelin is my commissioner. I stand in support of him. I am also the director of Broward County Human Services Department. Broward County is leading a dismantling racism initiative. The sheriff's office has agreed to come on board with our initiative and have all of his deputies trained to the tune of $500,000. So I am asking the municipality of Tamarac to be the first municipality in Broward County to come on board with the Dismantling Racism Initiative and use this as the platform to begin the race relations and healing work that is needed in our community. Take a stand and let us begin our healing process together.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Good evening. I'm Suzanne Bundy, and I'm in Broward County, Florida. I second Ms. Campbell's suggestion here. I have been blessed to be able to work with the Dismantling Racism Initiative for the last 3 years as part of my job, and for the last 24 years it's been part of who I have been as an adult. What we haven't talked about tonight is really up-leveling this conversation into understanding this is about something that happened 400 years ago and has been part of our institutions and structures ever since then. So while we have manifestations of what this looks like interpersonally, this is something that is part of our structures. And as we learn in the education that we've been able to be gifting not only our staff but our stakeholders, this goes back to ways to separate people. And so one of the definitions that we use operationally in our workshop is that it's a white supremacy system that was supported by and dependent upon an all-class collaboration to end cross-racial labor solidarity. So this is something that is a legacy of what was created over 400 years ago that you're seeing show up as a symptom of something much bigger than what we've been able to articulate tonight. And that is, as I said in the beginning, institutionally, if we don't start to up-level our thinking, we're going to keep standing here and having these emotional conversations. We're not going to be able to heal ever. And it is purposefully, we are confused in this nation about what race is and what racism is. And so it is the biggest honor of my life to be able to collide my personal beliefs in my work environment and to be able to have organized not just in the institution I work for, but across Broward County. So again, I want to invite you on behalf of our Dismantling Racism Initiative. Several of you in this room have been through the workshop, and you know what we're talking about here. So please consider that, and I know some of you have my contact information as well. Reach out, and I'd be happy to start to do that organizing work with you all in Tamarac. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this matter? Yes, sir.
Jeff Bridges, Broward County. I'm sure Mike didn't expect me to speak because it's not what I do, but I felt inclined to do so because, you know, we've listened to so many different people and two sides here. And it's always going to be that way until we make that change. Like Bob said, you know, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. But you know what? Coming from someone who has law enforcement, my family, a lot of my friends, if they were wrong and he called me and asked me, and that happened to my brother, if you're wrong, you're wrong. Take it. You just got to take it, buddy. You know, we all make mistakes, but we all got to live with those mistakes, right? So it doesn't matter if it happened here or if it happened in the courtroom. He went through all the steps that he could take, and this was his only option. It was. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, it's life. And so that officer has to take that responsibility for making that mistake when he made that mistake, because it was clear it was a mistake. And that's why it was dropped and things passed on. But Tamarac has to change what they're doing here. It looks like a divided nation, black people versus white people. And nobody said it, but that's what's happening here. Tamarac's had to change that. And police officers have to change that. You have to stand up for what's right. If you see something that's wrong, I know about it. My brother, we talk about it nightly, right? He's a sergeant. So he understands all this stuff that's happening. So I understand it. But you got to be right too. You know, don't just go home and say, you know what, there's nothing I can do about it. It's a tough life. Or I don't want to rock the boat, or I don't want to deal with the backlash. You know, be right. If you want everyone else to be right, you be right as well. And that's coming from someone who has dealt with police my whole life, right? I got a whole lot of friends who are police officers, family, so I understand. But I'm going to hold them accountable just like they should hold anyone else on the streets accountable. And if they're wrong, I'm going to tell them they're wrong. I don't care. And that's what you should be doing with your fellow co-workers, your other officers that you work the streets with. It's tough. It's not easy to do. I know it's not, but you got to do it because it's right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bridges. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this matter?
Good evening. My name is Bill May. I live in Tamarac, Florida. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners for letting me speak for a brief moment of time here this evening. I watched this over the past couple weeks, and in full disclosure, actually, I ran against Commissioner Gelin last November, and he handily won. So I just wanted to let you all fully know that. But as a citizen of Tamarac, I watched this for the past couple weeks, and you go back and forth and hear different stories. But on Friday, the actual video, Commissioner Gelin released it on Facebook, and I watched the video, and I looked at it at first, and at first I said to myself, well, what exactly did he do wrong? And then I watched it with a coworker, and then I said to myself, well, I said actually out loud to the coworker, well, the officer asked him to kind of stand down, and he didn't listen to the officer. Now, folks, I got to tell you, maybe I'm in the majority, and I know because there's a lot of oohs and ahs here and everything, and I'm not a minority, folks, so I understand that there's been things in the past of our, race relations and so forth. But when an officer tells me, hey, you should stand down, you should stand down. I served in the United States Navy, and I lived in the state of Hawaii for 4 years, actually, and I was a minority, actually, in Hawaii. And I got pulled over one time out there. And as a Navy guy, a white guy on the other side of the island, I was the minority. But when that officer asked me to just give me my licenses and registration insurance, I gave it to him and I shut up. So I'm sorry what happened to you, Mike. I really am. But I really feel as though, had you just listened to the officer and backed off, you wouldn't be in this predicament. That's just my personal opinion. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Seeing that there is none, and it is currently 9:25, we are going to take a 25-minute break. 20-minute break. It'll wind up being 25, let's be realistic, but 20-minute break. Man, we're going to go to public participation. And these standard rules and procedures of our public participation, we ask that when you come up, you have 3 minutes. You will hear a beep when you are running closer to the end of time. I believe that's at a 2.5-minute mark, and then another at 10-second mark. We do not share minutes here. We ask that everybody be cognizant that there are opinions that may be expressed that are different to your own. We give everybody the same respect and courtesy by listening, no booing, no cheering. If you're really excited about something, feel free to do the little snaps or whatever you'd like to do in a quiet manner, and we would appreciate that. And not that we will ever have to use this, but I have been told I need to make this item of everybody to be aware of, that if it's to be where you go past your minutes, I will gavel once. If you don't finish off relatively soon, I will gavel twice, and officers are going to flank you. And if you do not proceed to finish off your comments, then on the third gavel, you will be escorted out. And again, I say this just because I'm supposed to, but not that we will ever have to use it, so I'm not concerned. So with that being said, I'm going to move over to public participation for any items that are not on the agenda. So I have a list of people here, and I am going to read your name, and you can say on the agenda, and then I'll come back to you from that point in time, or if it's not on the agenda, I ask you to come forth. And if you've not had an opportunity to come and sign up, you'll be able to come and speak anyway. Just let me get through the list. So I have Dean Simpson. Is this for an item on the agenda, or would you like to speak now? I don't have Dean Simpson still here. Okay. Patty Lynn? Thank you. Lisa Turner? Thank you. Erilyn Baran? Not on the agenda? If it's not on the agenda, please join us. And ladies and gentlemen, if I do not say your name properly, please forgive me. And correct me when you come to the podium to say your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name's Erilyn. I'm 16. I go to JP Taravella, and I live in Tamarac, obviously, Northwest 68th Terrace.
Thank you.
And I'm just here because I know everyone has so many different opinions, and with everything going on with BSO in the city of Tamarac, I really feel like I want to encourage everyone to move forward in a really positive manner and to really bring the community together. And personally, I think the best way to do that would be considering for for Tamarac as a city to start its own police force as it had a long time ago. And the thing about that is that yes, for example, we talked about vaping. Yeah, it's a problem, but I go to a public school and a bigger problem is the fact that many kids don't feel safe around police officers. And this isn't anything against BSO, but the fact of the matter is Broward County is such a big county. We stretch as far as Miramar. If we had Tamarac police officers that know our roads, know our people, know our problems, and can have Tamarac related city participation, that would make a major impact on everyone. And, you know, as our commissioner said earlier, we want to include involvement about people that have the most impact on our citizens, and the people that have the most impact are our police officers. They're the people you call when you're in trouble, they're the people you call when you're having a problem, and they're the people that pull you over when you're driving too fast. And those police officers should be people that we can trust and we can support. And sadly, there's just way too many issues with police abusing their power. And that's just a general across the board. So having a police force that we can work on together as a community would make everyone feel a whole lot safer, especially minorities. And personally, it's something I'm really passionate about. And if anyone would like to work with me on it, this is a democracy and we should do what the people want. And I think the people of Tamarac would appreciate a police force that can support each other. So if anyone would like to work with me on that, I would be appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, we kind of just said no clapping, no cheering. We can, please. Snap, it's all good. And one thing that I also failed to mention is that we don't respond from the dais. We hear what you have to say. Our response or failure to respond is actually not a failure to respond. It's we're letting you speak your mind, okay? So thank you, Erilyn. I have Luke. It's on the agenda item. Okay, thank you. Curfew at our last meeting of 11:30. So we will be moving this right along. And we are back on our regular agenda item. And because we operate under Sunshine Law, this is our first opportunity to discuss this as a group. This item is on the agenda at my request because the past 2 weeks have been painful for our city and the people who care about it most, and we must find a way to move forward. I continue to vehemently disagree, and I will always disagree with the time and place approach that Commissioner Gelin used in expressing his complaint, and that is the only issue for tonight. We have been subject to a wave of negative national publicity and ridicule on social media, while also being the focal point of an angry debate. It is time for this to stop. While the media has chosen to focus on injustices in the judicial system, for us, the key issue is something quite different: adhering to the higher standards of conduct called for from our elected officials. The Commissioner's actions placed our BSO deputies in an unfairly harsh light, and at an event where we gathered to celebrate and honor public servants who earn those accolades with their actions. Our police deserve much better. No one, much less an elected leader of our city, should knowingly put Tamarac in the position of having its reputation damaged by attracting the kind of negative attention we've seen with this incident. Commissioner Gelin, we know that this is a deeply personal issue for you, but it could have been brought to light in a very different way, in a different place, at a different time, even just a few minutes later in Commission reports. Instead, once again, our country, and now in Tamarac, the heat of an angry argument has overwhelmed the light of reasoned, productive discussion that we all aspire to in our community. And at this point, I'm going to open the comments to my colleagues, and I see that I have the Vice Mayor's light lit. Please proceed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gelin, Mike, first of all, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
You spoke from the heart, and it's becoming, so you ought to use that more often.
Thank you.
What happened at our last City Commission meeting has affected us more than we could possibly know. It has spread much further and hurt people much more deeply than we possibly could ever imagine. There has been a significant amount of media coverage, including an opinion piece from the Sun Sentinel. None of this has been good for our city or our commission. We have been working diligently to improve the Tamarac brand and our reputation. Your reputation precedes you, and I fear this will follow us for a long time. Whoever said there's no such thing as bad publicity did not know what they were talking about. I guess unless you're a Kardashian. There have been a number of unintended consequences that resulted from Commissioner Gelin's actions during the last commission meeting. My colleague experienced something I have not, and I certainly hope I never do. I understand how deeply personal this was, and I believe it has affected him a great deal. I feel as though we all need to work towards solutions. I heard that word used quite a bit today, solutions, together. And this means raising issues and trusting this commission to understand and to take the appropriate action. Commissioner Gelin's actions and the resulting media coverage have hurt many people, more so than I ever thought possible. I understand why Commissioner Gelin felt he needed to do something. I feel it is unfortunate the way it happened. I've read any number of emails and sentiment from around the country and feel we are split right down the middle. We must support and work together as colleagues on this dais. I want my colleagues to know I support the fine men and women of law enforcement, as I believe they all do as well. I support our dedicated police professionals, and when they perform in a laudable manner in their demanding and dangerous job, their good work should be recognized. They keep all of us safe from the threats that we face every day, and even those we've recently experienced. They are to be applauded for their service. I will also continue to support those in our community who have individual grievances. As elected officials, we have access to any number of channels to address issues impacting our community. This issue could have been brought to us with the proper information for consideration and direction. Human frailty subjects us to making mistakes. I'm human, and I certainly have made mistakes. My colleague feels as though he did not deserve to be arrested. I don't know what that feels like. I feel for my colleague. I feel his pain. I would suggest that collectively we recognize that the time has come to move forward and do the jobs we were elected to do for all the citizens in Tamarac. I feel confident that we will succeed with mutual support and understanding. Commissioner Gelin's sincerity will be judged by his actions going forward, and I feel confident he will succeed with the support of us, his colleagues, and the community. I took several notes while people were talking today, and I heard resounding issues over and over. Let's all be part of the solution. This is an opportunity, a teachable moment, and I heard unity over and over again. I'm asking all of our residents, my colleagues, we need unity now. We need to heal our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Fishman?
Commissioner Gelin chose to make some disparaging remarks on an issue that happened 4 years ago. And he made those comments to a BSO officer who had been invited to our chambers as part of a recognition ceremony. He was being recognized for taking a murderer off our streets, and for that, he should be commended. I took the position that the commissioner was out of line in doing what he did in calling out the officer at the recognition ceremony because it was the wrong place and it was the wrong time. In doing so, I have been called numerous names that I will not say here, but I've also heard from people that told me that they agreed with me, that it was the wrong place and the wrong time. At no time did I argue the points of the issue that happened 4 years ago. That is not my job as a commissioner to do so. That was the job of the state attorney's office, who chose not to prosecute, and the job of BSO's internal affairs, who found no wrongdoing on the part of the officer. My objection has been and continues to be that the remarks were done in the wrong place and wrong time. One of the first things I learned as a manager was that you praise in public, you scold in private. Now there are people who are choosing to be the judge and jury in condemning a police officer based on comments made in a video seen. It is my hope that in the future, Commissioner Gelin will work with the rest of the commission. And if there is an issue that comes up, give us a heads up. There was an opportunity for you to share your concerns prior to that meeting, and you chose not to. It's my hope that in the future you will choose to, because I also believe this is a teachable moment. This is a going forward moment where we can learn from the past to change the future. Thank you.
Thank you. My concern is the conduct and actions of people who serve Tamarac from these chambers. Our code of ethics is very clear, and while I won't go through each point in detail, I will focus on item number 12. It says, each public officer agrees to be honest, fair, and respectful to others in performing his or her duties as a public officer, and agrees to refrain from and avoid conduct creating an appearance of impropriety or which is otherwise unbefitting a public officer, including but not limited to making false accusations or personal attacks against another public officer, or behaving in a rancorous or contentious manner. When this code of ethics is violated, we as an elected body have few options. In fact, the only one we have is public censure. And what is public censure? It is a formal statement of disapproval. The comments of the other members of this commission tonight have certainly fit into that category. As mayor, I will not knowingly take actions that I believe will harm Tamarac in the long run. So, in the best interest of our city, it is time to move forward and move on, as everyone has stated, and that is what I do call for here tonight. Based on the feedback from the community, I've spoken with Representatives Umfroy, Williams, Daly, and Jenny. All are ready to help us work on legislation to aid in the removal of mugshots from the internet and public record after records have been expunged or charges dropped, and prevent mugshots from becoming public record until the filing of a case or 90 days. Will this be the end-all, be-all? No, but it is the start of a process of moving forward, and together we can build on that. And for the good of the city that I have lived in and loved for the past 26 years or so, I ask that we return to reason and work together to begin the healing. We can be different here. We are different here. Tamarac can stand for something better, working together on the toughest problems and in a respectful manner. We can model locally what we are so starved to see from our leaders nationally: respect and dignified dialogue on issues that require inner stamina to listen to perspectives that we may viscerally disagree with, and yet stay in a conversation that positively impacts the current situation. To learn from one another, to walk a mile in another's shoes. But let us have these chambers always be a place for safety, where people can come together to celebrate successes as well as hash out tough issues, and walk away with mutual respect and understanding. All leaders make mistakes. Good leaders learn from them. I've continuously said a line that a gentleman said tonight, unity in community. And that's what we must be, unity in community. So as everyone has said, I hope we can learn from this and move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience here this evening. There is no motion for censure. We are happy to have had this discussion, and thank you very much for having it with us. And thank you very much. I appreciate the snacks.
Hey Sheriff County, this is Sheriff County COPWATCH. I am using any video here with under fair use if you have criticism, reporting, teaching, etc. And please donate. I do not make money from YouTube, and there are different ways to donate in the video links. Thanks.